Hello, welcome to the New Stack Makers, a podcast where we talk about at-scale application development, deployment, and management. Thanks to Capital One, our sponsor here at South by Southwest, where we're doing podcasts live from the Capital One house at Antone's. Hey, it's Alex Williams of the New Stack here at the Capital One house at the South by Southwest conference. Here with Clark Ferry, and Clark is with Capital One, and Clark is the person who we go to learn about the Hydrograph project and who's really helping lead the Hydrograph project. And the Hydrograph project, just for people's sake, is what exactly, Clark? Can you explain it to us?
Hydrograph is an open source project, and it's an open source project that helps people manage all their data. So, if you're trying to integrate data from a lot of different sources, if you're trying to enrich data, you're trying to do ETL using the traditional language, it's the tool that allows you to take data from all these different places, put it together, and present it for your data analyst, present it for a application you're using, but put it together in a way that's meaningful for that particular use of data. So, examples include building databases for analysts, or loading data up to be used for a specific web app. So, all uses for ETL.
So we were talking about this earlier, about the uses for something like Hydrograph, and from a very top level look, you think about how difficult it is to pull different data sources together, from the very simple, most simple use all the way up to the more complex. And ETL is the technology that's been used for years to do this, but it's mostly been the domain of database administrators, right? And ETL is extract, transform,
and load,
right?
Yep.
And so now we're seeing this new use for developers. What is the use for the developers here that Hydrograph offers?
Yeah, so this technology has been around for a while, but big commercial implementations, very expensive. We're trying to make it more accessible to more folks. And for developers, it's really about productivity. We provide a really nice graphical interface that allows you to manipulate data in the way you think about data. If you're going to draw up your process on the whiteboard or the chalkboard, and you talk about, I want these two inputs, and I need to join them together on the account key, and then I want to filter out all the pending payments, so I just have the full payments left, and then I want to roll them up in case somebody's made 2 payments, and then I put that into a database. Think about that process, the way you draw that up. We really provide an interface to allow you to code in the same way you think or draw up a process. And this is really what Hydrograph is all about. It's productivity that allows you to think through the problem and then really turn that into real code and something that is executable and can run in everything from a very small environment like your laptop to a massive cloud environment that takes billions and billions of records and pumps them through. So, sort of available to all at various scales and make it really simple, accessible, and very productive. So, a analyst can follow along with the developer and think through it with them, and then you can just take it to production.
So this is an open source project, and you just did open source it, and that seems to be something that Capital One is really engaging in more these days, is in the open source community. What is the importance of that for Capital One in making this open source?
Yeah, so I'd say a couple of things. Capital One is fully invested in the open source community. We contribute back to projects, but we also leverage everybody else's projects. And Hydrograph's a great example. Hydrograph leverages about 1,400 other projects to bring this to market. And
that's amazing.
Yeah, and we really think about it in terms of, if we're using other people's work in this type of way, we really should give back as well. And really, we think it's important to do that. We've built something here that is significant, and we think that by working together, we can all get to a better place faster. You know, we've built the components we need, but we know that there's things that are very universal here. But there's also a continual evolving environment, and there's going to be new things that come into play, and somebody else might need them before us. We might be able to deliver that new component before they do, and by all of us working together, we're going to get to a much better product, and one that's more inclusive to both technologies and developers and companies, so that more people can really get benefit out of this type of thing.
The scale is so quick now. It's so complex. It requires massive amounts of data. Open source seems to be almost like the only answer. It's like if software is at the center of business, then an open source is at the center of software. It just makes sense to do this.
Absolutely. I mean, most of the tools that all of us use today really are open source. Yeah, you think of everything from our operating systems to the programming languages we use, even things like getting into the way we all browse the internet. Open source is everywhere. It is the infrastructure. It's the pipes that allow you to browse the web and really do everything. I'm trying to think of something today that doesn't have some component of open source tied into it, and it's really hard to think about something like that. It's everywhere, and it's the future.
So I'd like to talk about three things: the technology architecture, the use cases, and the roadmap going forward. So let's look at the technology architecture behind Hydrograph.
Yeah, we've been very conscious to build a modular system here. And it is because we believe the world continues to change, and we know that we want to be able to swap out pieces and have that be independent of those technology choices. So the architecture is three-part. It's an RCP rich client platform as the front end, the user interface. It's an XML layer in the middle that is really the rule set. As I deploy code, I deploy this configuration set that acts as a bridge between the two and allows me to swap either one. And then the back end, which right now we support both the cascading framework for things like MapReduce, but also Spark. So I've got my three layers, and all of them can be changed. But that bridge in the middle means, and recently we did this, we added Spark because we thought Spark was the future. And we did that without breaking the front end and without breaking the existing application. So I think that has been really, really powerful for us.
Okay, great. So you have that back-end architecture. You use cascading and Spark. Now tell us a little bit about the use cases. But actually, let me back up a little bit. Before I get into the use cases, what are some of the different aspects of those modular, the different modular capabilities that come with Hydrograph? On the front end, you're using Eclipse, as I understand, right?
Yeah, RCP. So Eclipse is built on RCP as well. That's the common thing that everybody's heard of related to RCP. But there's so much that we leverage as part of that. People have already built the plugins to GitHub and other things within that. So in the end of the day, we're not UI developers. That's not our core capability. We're really more about the data. So we wanted to leverage something on the front end that really gave us a fast jump start, but also had all those things built in we really needed already. And then focus most of our attention on sort of how you work with data, which is really what our expertise is. Capital One is a data company. We have a lot of people in other spaces that do great UI, but my area is all about data. How do you manage it? How do you deliver it? So RCP on the front end was our jump start into that.
Great. Now, tell us a little bit about the use cases that you're seeing, and I'm curious about the use cases. What are the early use cases that you're seeing? What do you think are going to be some of the core use cases? And what are some of the use cases that you're really just starting to discover?
Yeah, so one of the biggest things we're doing is using this tool set to move our infrastructure from the old on-prem. So we have data centers, we have lots of servers, a lot of them run data ETL tools. As we move to the cloud, and we're fully in on the Amazon cloud, Rob Alexander, our CIO, has talked about that a lot. we wanted to change out the technologies to be much more flexible. And this is the migration of those things from the old legacy stack to the cloud. This is our bridge to help us get to the cloud. So that's use case number one, a very important one. We're also using it for new things. Like there are new batch interfaces, new files that are delivered all the time, and this is just a great common tool that we've tied into so much of the way we manage data, the way we govern our data, and the way we secure our data, that we're using it for those brand new file feeds as well. So legacy was probably the starting point, but then the new things are also a big part of it. And we're using it for a variety of projects. We have one where we're sort of working with some, I believe it's HR type data and loading that into a very specific application for that group.
So this ties back into actually the modular capabilities that come with Hydrograph, because the use cases are really for developers, aren't they? And so the developers who are using Hydrograph, they can really use it for whatever purpose they want. They might have they may have a big data warehouse, right? Or they may not, right? Yeah. Isn't that the intent here?
Yeah, I mean, this is the ultimate in flexibility. So this is about that developer, and it is really a development tool. So you don't have to go out there and write low-level Java to move 3 files around and merge them together. You can do it very much in a flowchart style interface, and you can use it for a massive data warehouse, or you can use it for a very small sort of great example. I talked to a gentleman in healthcare was looking at for his not-for-profit. And it's not a massive amount of data, but he was thinking about, how do I put all this data together and present it back to some of his customers? And this, perfect for that type of application as well, not just the things on the multiple billions of row scale, but things on the hundreds or thousands of row scale.
Right. So tell us about the roadmap going forward.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we are, Capital One is always looking at new technologies and things like different databases, different file formats, and the different things that our end users, and our end users a lot of times are data scientists or digital product owners, people who want to do cool things with data, build applications like we've seen so much of here at South by Southwest. So we're always looking at new file formats and new ways to present data to databases. But at the same time, we spend a lot of time thinking about the way the input data is changing. So a great example is streaming is becoming much more common. Those regular feeds of data that come through come through APIs. So we're looking at everything from both that front end of the latency and how data arrives, and that getting much shorter, but also all the different targets on the back end. So really everything, and the great thing about this is that everything can change. It's what's exciting about data technologies is that it's all constantly evolving. And we're prepared to really go where our customer, our data scientist customer, our digital product owner, or our application space needs us to go. So streaming is the no-brainer, and different target technologies from a database standpoint and from a data environment standpoint are the two that are guaranteed to happen. Everything else, that's the fun of being in the space.
Well, Clark, thank you very much for taking some time to talk with us about Hydrograph, an exciting new open source project. We look forward to learning more about it, in the months and year ahead.
Thank you. It's been a lot of fun.
Thanks to Capital One, our sponsor for our podcast from South by Southwest at the Capital One House. Thanks for joining us.